Hey, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Welcome back to Post-Hoc Live. We took a little bit of a break in August, but we are back from summer. My kids are off at school, and we are back with you here on air. I am Drew Armstrong, the executive editor of Endpoints News, and today I'm joined by our biotech correspondent, Kyle Lahusik. Um, Kyle, every week you have stories about a startup that's either just raised a really big round and is coming out of stealth, or you've found one that's letting go of people and is shutting down. And biotech feels more volatile and tricky than ever right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say they're probably more speed bumps than ever for the industry right now, especially for early stage startups.
And like why is that? I mean, and you know, I guess when you talk to all these founders who are starting new companies, I have to imagine that you're pretty optimistic, but it's got to take a certain type of optimism to get started in this particular moment that we've been in for the last year or two.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of the founders that I was talking to were actual academic founders, who would be taking a company out of the lab or out of a exciting preclinical finding. But a lot of the, startup executives I'm interviewing now, I feel like a lot of them have actually been in the industry for a while. So a lot of these companies are installing experienced veterans right away as soon as they
Well,
come out.
yeah, and that is, obviously we talk about these things and we do set them up a little bit, but that is the perfect introduction to our guests for today. We have two people who are not only crazy enough to try and start another company and have not done it not just once, but more than that, and they've been pretty successful at it. John Maraganore is, among many other things, the founding CEO of Alnylam Pharmaceuticals. He has an extensive collection of empty champagne bottles to testify to how that has gone. Clive Meanwell is the co-founder of the Medicines Company, which is another amazing exit and story in the biopharma industry. Today, they announced their newest company, Corsera Health, which has $50 million in funding and is going after cardiovascular disease. We're going to talk to them about what it takes to launch a startup in this environment. Tiny bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are joining us for the first time, hello. Post-Hoc Live brings you the reporting, the analysis, and the debate that usually happens behind the scenes in our newsroom live to you. If you're joining us on YouTube and you are not already following us, please hit that little subscribe button below our feed to get alerts about future live streams. You could also sign up for the Post-Hoc email on your Endpoints News subscription page. And for those of you joining us on YouTube today, you can use the live chat to join the conversation, ask us questions. Our producer will feed them to me over Slack. I'll see them. If they're good, I will toss them into our conversation. And if you miss us, live recordings will live on YouTube, on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. So let us get started. John and Clive, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us. I can't believe we have never had either one of you on with us before. We've been chatting in the green room. We've been having a lot of fun. I will start this off before I hand things over to Kyle. What you guys have both done this multiple times. You sit on boards, you know this industry. What is different about launching a new company right now compared to what it has been like in the past when you have started new ventures?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll start. I mean, Drew first, and Kyle, thanks for having us. It's great to be here. We unstealthed Coursera Health today. We're super excited about that. I mean, look, there's no doubt this is one of the toughest environments for fundraising we've seen in the industry, arguably ever. But in 2002, when we started Alnylam, it was also a bad time. The tech bubble had burst. Nobody was investing in real innovation. People were investing in, products that had come out of pharma that were being repurposed for different reasons. It was a very bad time, and it's actually the best time to start a company because you do have a concentration of talent that's available. Higher quality people that are available, more experienced people that are available, and you have to get super smart and sharp about your business plan in this type of environment and think long and hard around what's the right value creation strategy, what are you going to really do, what are you not going to do. So there is something about that bar getting raised just that much higher that I think is actually a positive thing for getting started in this type of environment. I don't know, Clive, if you agree.
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate, in addition to the other things I've done, to be on the board of BB Biotech, the Swiss investment corporation that mainly picks biotech public stocks. I've watched John build Alnylam in an extraordinary way and then hand over the reins to Yvonne, who's doing a fabulous job, and watched that cycle and watched a lot of other things come and go. I think I've been on that board for more than 20 years. Well, one thing that I've noticed, Drew, is a broadening of the lens. When the specialists are left and the generalists have left, I think it's a lot of intelligent introspection by the industry. And what that has led to, in addition, because of other environmental shifts, to a broadening of the lens from not just the biology, not just the clinical trials, not just the FDA, but suddenly there's whole commercial channel issues to be discussed that are new, mainly driven by the enthusiasm around GLP-1s, but also some other drugs. And the other thing that's broadening the lens is an awareness that as an industry, biotechnology needs to get really good at manufacturing in an efficient way. We've been brilliant at making complex molecules, cell therapies, gene therapies, and so on, incredibly complex products. And now that lens has also been broadened to, well, how do you do that amazing stuff at scale? And with efficiency that allows economies so that you can make a lot of product for bigger populations. So I think the broadening of the lens has been very exciting to watch in the last 3 years, even while we've all cried into our beer a few times about capital availability all the time. Because I don't drink champagne, I can only afford beer.
Well, first of all, I'm jealous that Drew and I are not sitting together as you two are. But
We'll do it next time. Yeah.
You guys talk more about the funding model here, why put most of the money in yourselves? Is this something where you thought about, at the outset, maybe bringing in VCs, or is the plan all along to start with your money?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is a blessing that we're able to do this level of funding on our own, which we don't take for granted. It's also because we believe in this so strongly. That we're funding it on our own. I've never done a level of funding on something like this at this level by a long shot. And it's because, we strongly believe that cardiovascular prevention has to be done. This is the right time to do it. We're passionate about that issue. We believe that we can build a very successful and very valuable company by doing it. So obviously, we're making these investments with the goal of making a return personally as well, and benefiting from that high level of ownership that you can have if you invest early in what you're doing. But this is just the beginning of our funding journey. At Alnylam, we raised a total of $7.5 billion over the 20 years that I was there. We're hoping it'll be a fraction of what we need, small fraction of what we need for Corsera Health to get its first products to medicine, and I believe it will be. But we will bring in other investors and venture investors, crossover type investors, the full blend of what's needed, and they'll bring in additional capital and frankly also great ideas and great input around our business model and what we should do.
Can I go back to something you guys said a second ago, maybe, and Clive and John? I mean, you all mentioned, there's a saying out there that like great companies are built in downturns. And I think a lot of people think that happens to be because of, discipline or rigor. And I'm sure that's true as well. But both of you mentioned things about talent. And I'm wondering if there are other aspects of kind of building during a downturn like this that people don't necessarily appreciate, whether it's the opportunity to be opportunistic about some of the people are out there or other. Can you just touch on that for 1 second before we move on?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Drew. I think if you combine the problem, so technology is always fascinating, but it's not the main problem anymore. I mean, the unpacking of biological systems has been so amazing in the last 25 years that there are probably more good ideas out there in terms of technological leads than one needs even. Then you say, well, if you want to move something quickly and there's a financial downturn, two things have to happen. One, the cadence can't let up. You can't go slow because there's not money available. So you have to sort of basically wing it a little bit yourselves. And secondly, as you say, the talent is turning over more. And even the very best leaders in our industry, we've all, had situations which didn't turn out how we'd hoped. The availability to move on that talent quickly by funding yourself is very important. Now you're sort of sticking your neck out a little bit, and it leads to certain discussions around the kitchen table occasionally at home. But I think it's a way to move quickly is to self-fund and with network, which we're both very fortunate to have, put together great teams quickly. And at times like this, that's a little easier, if anything.
I mean, it's an interesting experience with Coursera right now because we've got this interesting, and you've talked about it, Clive, this blending of the Alnylam culture with the medicines company culture, discovering really wonderful things in both cultures that we're bringing together, because we do have a number of former Alnylam employees, people that have left Alnylam, did something else, and then we've recruited them to be part of this endeavor. And also the same with the medicines company through Population Health Partners. So it's been a wonderful way to access talent that happens to be available. But, in this type of more challenging environment, people want to go to an effort that they believe can be successful. And they do like to follow experienced leaders as a result of that, because understandably, there's a greater sense of, okay, these guys might actually know, maybe fooled them. They might actually know what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think our roles, I'll speak for myself, but you may agree that our roles have changed so much over the years. I mean, when you used to be the youngest person in the room, the one with the PowerPoint slide deck, that was thrilling and exciting to drive things. Now you're not the youngest person in the room ever. And you're generally not the person with the PowerPoint slide deck either. You're sort of reacting to it, coaching it. I think sort of being able to speak third, fourth, or fifth in a discussion is a real pleasure. It's kind of like leadership and management ice cream to watch younger, still brilliant people put their ideas together in front of you. And I think we've known each other long enough to kind of have no real ego in the hunt. We've seen each other through thick and thin on lots of situations, and I don't think I've ever found a disagreement. And we've done some pretty big deals together, big things together. But to just watch the two diasporas, if you like, come together,
super cool,
is really interesting.
Super cool,
fabulous, actually. Yeah.
Speaking of being younger, I mean, even just 5 years ago, would you all have started Coursera the same way in 2020, 2021? Or, do you think the current VC model can support a company like this?
It's an interesting question, Kyle. I mean, well, first of all, I think the fact that we're able to start it this way is a bit different. I'm not sure I would have been quite as ready to be able to start it this way back in 2020 or 2021. But there's no doubt that bringing the teams together like we're bringing them together, putting the capital together and our own capital together in this way is unique. But I think it's a valuable way to do it. And again, we'll still bring in, and we will absolutely raise additional funds to do what we're doing. It's going to cost a lot more than what we put into it already. And we'll need a bigger team. So we'll bring a lot more people together with diverse backgrounds and diverse work experiences. But I do think, the experience that we've been able to bring to the table, the capital that we've done right now, but most importantly, an important mission. Let's not forget the reason people come to work at our company and any other new startup is because they believe in the mission of what we're trying to do. They believe in this big, bold endeavor that we have started, and that's what's driving a lot of the attraction of talent to come here.
And I think on the investor side, if you've had the good fortune to be able to return attractive returns to shareholders previously, I hate to say it, but they're much more likely to take your phone call this time. So we have been talking to all of our friends in the industry and the financing community who, as John mentioned earlier, add a lot of value, but obviously they themselves have network. And the globalization of biotech funding has been very, very important. You know, some of the big VCs who in turn have amazing relationships with sovereign wealth funds and pension plans around the world. It's a sort of amplification effect. And if you know each other and you've seen each other in a foxhole before now, because neither Alnylam nor the medicines company had, not every week was perfect.
No.
Most of John's weeks were
Oh,
perfect.
no.
You know,
Only
I
at
think
the end.
they get very interested in how you handle adversity, and they learn your resilience, which famously, of course, is always what entrepreneurs say after success. They don't say, I was brilliant. They say, thank God I hung in there and was resilient. And I think investors, particularly professional investors, understand that and appreciate that. So it's good to have a network of people who've seen you in bad days and on good days.
Yeah.
I
I
want
like
to
the
ask you.
foxhole analogy.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yes.
I want to ask you about the disease area you all are thinking about. You know, I mean, when we look at the cardiovascular space, yeah, we've had statins for decades. You know, we've had the injectable PCSK9 drugs, and now you guys are looking at, you know, it sounds like your own PCSK9 targeting RNAi medicine. Talk to me about how, you know, can you talk a little bit about how you view the unmet medical need? Because I think, you know, just trying to get my head around this, like, you know, cardiovascular disease is a, you know, absolute scourge. My dad is a cardiologist, you know, I mean, like I've, you know, known this stuff since I was a little kid. I got taken my first open heart surgery for a valve replacement to watch when I was, you know, like 10 years old. It was very cool. You know, but at the same time, like, there are a lot of tools that are out there already. You know, why don't you guys talk a little bit about like where you see the unmet need, either from a, you know, from a medical standpoint, from a cost standpoint, from an access standpoint? I mean, what are we missing here that needs to change? Where do you see the shortfall in the market?
I'll start.
This is a very favorite topic of ours, but really this is not new medicine we're talking about. In fact, one of the great strengths we believe of what we're doing is there aren't any huge biological, medical, or clinical outcome surprises anticipated, unlike many projects we might have done in the past. What is, however, essential, Drew, is a lowering of what some call disutility. And for a non-health economist like me, what I believe that means is anything that's inconvenient or too expensive, which a lot of the healthcare system is. Today, OECD countries are spending 98% of their healthcare dollars on treatment. Here in the US, it's more like 93%, and 7 or 8% is spent on prevention. Now, this can get mushed up a bit with social measures of prevention, you know, education, living conditions, so on, but the healthcare part of it has not been well funded. And physicians, who are obviously central decision makers in many things that happen to us, like your dad, like me, are not that excited about prevention. They're aware of it, they're supportive of it, but someone else ought to do it because my job is to look after sick people. And as you say, put heart valves in or do cabbage, and they'll do that brilliantly when you need it. So where do you go if you actually want to start much earlier to prevent diseases? You need a different setup. And even though the technologies we're working with are basically the same as the ones we've worked, you know, peptides, oligos, things we've done for a long time, it's the business model overall that's changing. Earlier intervention in relatively healthy, much younger people than is typical, maybe a 40-year-old instead of a 65-year-old, people who don't have strong evidence of disease today, maybe they have known calculable risk, and knowing what lifetime risk they have is very important. And then trying to help them understand how to take simple measures now. And I don't mean eating kale and running, you know, 20,000 steps a day. That's, for most normal people, that's not easy.
I hate kale.
Yes.
I like kale, but I take your point.
Yeah.
I gotta dress it up. Yeah.
Is to get people to think about what simple measures can we provide, including, yes, taking drugs, which, by the way, is not that much different in our mind than taking a vitamin, which is a dubious value. Whereas if you took a statin or something else, that would be of considerably more value because you're dealing with the cumulative exposure to these hazards like LDL cholesterol and blood pressure. And so you've got to say, okay, how do we make that easier, more accessible, more affordable, more educable than we're doing as a healthcare system today? So I think it's not new technology really, which we like, but it certainly is a new business model.
I mean, you know, the opportunity, Drew, of preventing cardiovascular disease and truly bending the curve on morbidity and mortality is something, I mean, people really aren't doing it right now, which is what we want to forge ahead with in a pioneering way in building this company. So we view it as a market that is ripe for disruption. There really aren't the right solutions out there today that are there. People could take an oral pill, an oral statin, and an oral antihypertensive, do it once a day. Very few of those people are compliant with their medicine. They typically drop their prescription after 1 year. 50% of them drop it after 1 year. Over 90% drop it after 3 years. So having a preventative medicine that is given once a year by a small volume subcutaneous injection is a true disruption for how you can think about prevention.
Yeah, I think I wanted to ask you a follow-up here. I mean, you know, I think when I first started reading about the PCSK9 drugs, and I think we all remember, you know, there were a couple early articles about this. They found, I believe it was a fitness instructor in Texas or something like that. And, you know, and it was kind of hyped as like this person, because of this genetic mutation, you know, they could eat steak every day for the rest of their life and they would never have a heart attack. And I think I and a lot of people, when we heard that, thought like, great. Everyone should be, you know, like, why should we ever have to worry about this again? And of course, that hasn't been the case. And so I think, you know, it's quite interesting to me to see you guys taking another crack at this, because it you know, it felt like, you know, I think when I read that and I realized there was probably, you know, some excitement around that, there has been some hype around these drugs, but it doesn't make sense to me that isn't an accessible and as prevalent probably as it could and should be. And I realize there's a lot to do with the healthcare system and the cost of those drugs and da 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 da. But yeah, I think that's been a bafflement to me and a lot of other people since then.
But you know, to build on what you're saying, Drew, the fact is we have a lot of tools on the table now that we didn't have 20 years ago.
That's it.
Not only do we have these amazing biological tools, some of which completely, you know, John brought to the world, but we also have digital tools now, and the ability to scale, to interact with many, many people is much lower cost than it used to be. So that it's possible online to educate people. It's possible for them to interact with a provider, possibly. It's certainly possible for them to decide what they want to do. And so models like Hims and Hers, which really have opened the doors, the windows, I should say, for all of us to think about channel differently, and obviously been important and will continue to be important for the GLP-1 growth. We see these windows opening for our industry in ways we didn't have before. And so the confluence of consumer behavior, of big digital support, good in real life experiences as well, matched to exceptional biotechnology, that usually in our industry, we talk about multidisciplinary, and we mean, you know, a pharmacologist and a regulatory person and a clinician. Here we're talking about big scale multidisciplinary, you know, digital, consumer, big manufacturing, certainly big biotech, and bringing it together at that scale. A little more ambitious, but I think it's where the big advances are going to be made as we try to prevent diseases like cardiovascular disease, not just treat them when they arise.
And you know, we need to be grounded in scientific evidence in doing all this, which we feel very confident in being able to do. So while the wellness market is a $6 trillion market, the pharmaceutical market is dwarfed by that type of number. The number of options in that wellness market that are scientifically based is relatively small. And that's where we can fit into in the scheme of things with the approach that we're taking.
There's quite a few people in the media and supporting the media, you know, that you know and we know, who are really helping to make sure that snake oil syndrome doesn't get out of hand. You know, there is every reason for people to go online and buy things for their health and wellness, but there's also every reason for them to be aware of what the pros and cons are. And as John said, our determination here is to bring a kind of scientific foundational approach to everything we do and bring that into the consumer field. We've done a lot of consumer research already, and they are not looking to be patronized or talked down to. They're looking for simple explanations of information that they can act on as an individual or as a family.
I'm curious, you all have talked about this lower cost mission. Are you worried at all that that could change as you bring in external investors? And Clive, last week, I know when we talked, you mentioned, you know, already thinking about the direct to consumer model. So I'm curious, you know, also how early should biotechs be thinking about commercialization and these new models that we're seeing?
Yeah, I'm not Kyle, because you know, because this is the business model we're fronting. And I think it's self-evident that if we're going to tackle prevention and really address the millions of people in the US and the world that can benefit by a preventative medicine, you have to be talking about a lower price, larger volume business model, which I think anybody gets. In fact, you know, Drew's comment before about the PCSK9 drugs and so forth. I mean, they're priced at thousands of dollars per treatment, and so they are good for treatment. People that might get lucky in their life and blessed with resources may be able to do it for prevention, but that's very, very few people. Very few people.
We should make sure we differentiate between cost effectiveness and budget impact. The problem here is many of the drugs that are coming to market, including the ones John's referring to, are highly, highly cost effective. But when you scale that to maybe 100 million users, the budget impact exceeds what the health system has available. So you have two choices: bring the drug price down dramatically, or take it to another market, one that is bigger, has more wallet dollars, and who are willing to pay it. Ironically, taking it to that consumer market, you actually have to bring the price down anyway, because consumers won't want to spend that much out of their household income every year. So all roads point towards a sort of increase in efficiency and affordability. And then your business channel can still be any one of the above. It can be the traditional channel via primary care physicians or even specialists, and it could be the direct-to-consumer channel, by which I don't mean TV adverts, I mean really direct-to-consumer channel, and everything in between. And I think that the sort of fashion word might be efficiency, as an industry looking inwardly and saying, are we truly as efficient as we think we should be and need to be to create great returns for shareholders while serving larger markets in scale?
So this brings me to a question I ask. You know, I find myself asking almost everybody this efficiency question, which is with the China dynamic that's going on here. And, you know, there's probably no more efficient place right now making and cranking out new molecules than China. I'm wondering, you know, what you guys how that dynamic affected how you thought about starting a new company right now, and you know, whether it changed, you know, as you are thinking about it. How does the kind of knowing that there are probably dozens of companies watching exactly every single move you're doing, the spaces where you might be in, thinking about filing patents or anything like that, how does the China dynamic play into your thinking right now when it comes to starting a new company, or anybody else who's thinking about starting a new company?
Well, you know, a couple of things on that, Drew. I mean, first of all, I'm a believer that innovation can and should come from anywhere in the world, and as long as we're not dealing with outright IP theft concerns, and I'm not, you know, personally of the view that there's much of that going on. Maybe NSA has got information that I'm not privy to, so that's fine. But as long as IP is being respected, I believe innovation should come from anywhere in the world, and bring it on. Now, what you need to do when you're competing, as we are potentially, is be mindful around when you go public with what you're doing. So we've been stealth for 2 years.
Yeah.
Our first drug will be in the clinic starting next month in October.
Do you think, are we going to see a lot more of that? This kind of like stealth?
I think so.
Into the clinic?
I think so. I think there will be a lot more companies that stay stealth longer. try to get the kinks out of their system, try to get their real disruptive innovation more advanced before they go public. So there's that element of it for sure. I also think that, because of, my and my team, the team's experience with RNAi-based medicines, and then Clive and his team's experience in doing late drug development and commercialization, I'm not too worried about others trying to copy what we're doing. It's also a very large market space, and so the competition is a good thing at the end of the day. So I think we're very well positioned to be the leader in doing what we're doing. We are putting ourselves out there to lead this new space, and we will lead this new space. But we have to be mindful and be a little bit more stealth longer. Of course, we filed patents on our molecules, on the approach, our AI algorithm that we use to predict long-term risk. I mean, these are all patent protected assets for Corsera Health, but we also have to be a little bit more mindful about being stealth as we were for 2 years.
I hate to
And look, the comment about talent is also global. The USA biotech industry benefited greatly from the inflow of great scientific talent from Asia, including, of course, China, in the last 30 years. People came to our universities, they did PhDs, then they got jobs in American biotech companies, they learned the trade. Some of them have gone back and started their own businesses very, very successfully. And we shouldn't underestimate the strength of that community. A lot of us grew up together, and, there are many, many US-based entrepreneurs and investors who spend a lot of time in China now, seeing friends, meeting new friends, trying to figure out what the best stuff is and how it's moving. So again, that human dynamic remains very powerful and important for global biotechnology as well. And I don't think I've not heard any policymaker from any stripe or political leaning say that they don't want innovation to proceed through human endeavor. No one's saying that, I don't think.
Not yet.
There are some things that are a bit rocky at the moment, but a lot of it is about picking up the phone and talking to someone you've worked with before.
Yeah.
You've both talked a lot about leadership here, and I want to end with a simple question. Do you think more biotechs need 2 CEOs?
Ooh, I got a nice I got a nice email from Justin and Josh over at Amylyx today saying, they're really excited to see that we're doing the co-CEO gig together. Look, Clive and I have worked together for 3 decades. And I think there probably are other groups of people, other teams of people. When I was building Alnylam, for all practical purposes, Barry Green was my co-CEO. I mean, he was called the president, not the CEO. But it could have been a reverse. When I was at Millennium, I partnered closely with Mark Levin and Kevin Starr, and we were really partners. So I think partnership models of leadership are super, super important. Look at Len and George at Regeneron as a great example. I mean, one's the CEO, one's the head of R&D, but they're really partners at the end of the day. You could call them co-CEOs, and they might even go for that. But in this case, we're doing it as co-CEOs.
And it's been thus from the dawn of biotech. Swanson and Boyer is the famous. One with a more of a financial strategy mindset, the other with the more scientific mindset. You need, I said it a moment ago, you need high-level multidisciplinary talent to do this kind of work. And we've been doing it together on and off for 30 years, and I think we just enjoy watching each other at work. I mean, it's a pleasure to hang around with someone like John, and it makes a lot of difference to see someone with highly complementary skills. And if you're having a good day, it's not likely that you're both having a bad day. It's a way of keeping the team moving in a constant cadence.
Well, it does seem like you guys get along pretty well. So we'll have to have both of you back on to the show sometime again in the future. John, Clive, thank you for joining us. This has been a blast. We'll have to I'll pop by the next time you're opening up some of that champagne and pour myself a
Yeah.
glass if you don't mind.
Please do. Please do.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you to our audience for being with us as well. The recording of this conversation is on YouTube momentarily and will be up on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts shortly later this afternoon. You will not have to wait long to see us again. We're back tomorrow at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, to talk about the Endpoints 11. That is our look at the most promising biotech startups of the year. We'll be going over the selection process. We'll be looking at how our past honorees have fared and who is up and who is down. If you are already signed up for our Post-Hoc newsletter, you'll get notifications about that broadcast as well as other shows we have coming up soon. If you're not signed up, head over to Endpoints News, top right-hand corner, hit the reader profile link, then preferences, and click to activate Post-Hoc. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and Blue Sky by searching for Endpoints News. A huge thank you to our producer, Nicole Wetzman, and our engineer, Dalen Turk. I'm Drew Armstrong for Post-Hoc Live and Endpoints News. We will see you the next time news breaks.